Hello and most welcome to 1974 of the H series. We will today continue with the article Growth Points from the Very Beginning by, amongst other, David McNeill. And this is a continuation from 1971. Last time we took a close look at how gestures are not redundant features of communication or language, that they come together and the gesticular, are the foundation for the holistic in the expression. It's called a holophrasis. So the holophrasis is if you go up a little bit there, it was just the sentences there, it was very nice. The holophrasis is the gesture, and the compositionality, those are the words, the morphemes often called, not in this article. The atoms, if you like. The holophrasis is the global take, where everything is at once. The compositionality is one by one, sort of atomistic singularities, fragmentation, and so on. These coexist. Kendon called them two aspects of utterance. This is to be compared with traditional linguistics, where gestures are just decorum, something added to the essence of the words. A supplément, if you want to use a Derridian gesture. So gesture is global and synthetic. Linguistic is analytic and combinatoric. For me, reading this David McNeill, it is a backdoor to the right hemisphere. It is easy to get into the understanding that wholeness is not something that emerges from fragmentation and atomism. It is there from the very beginning. And this is, of course, very unlike traditional philosophy, academia. It's even called emergism in academia, the idea that consciousness comes from all the small parts. Where enough of these small parts are gathered, consciousness all of a sudden erupts, come to existence. David McNeill et al. Says no to that. Say no to that. No. The wholeness, the global take, quantum relativity, whole and wholeness, all those things were always present. Never for a second to disappear. Wholeness is the starting point of the whole of the universe. The whole of the universe. It never disappears, and it doesn't emerge. It's immanent. In the example here, it's a retold story, the fight between Sylvester and Tweety.
Meow.
Beep, beep. The informant is retelling the story how Sylvester climbs the inside of a drain pipe and thereby showing the sign of the interiority of the drain pipe and going up with his left hand. That's a global gesture. It covers all what he says. And it's more and it's less than he says. It's the holistic take like this. Interiority going up. Sylvester as rising hollowness, McNeill writes. These dimensions are identifiable as parts only in the meaning landscape of the whole. So it's a wholeness. It was never separated. The idea of linearity comes simultaneously, but it's not the entirety of the story. A sentence can come in one instance. Reality could be immediate, direct, without waiting time. And the first sentence I will make as a quote: the gestural mode contrasts with the bottom-up determination of meaning. It's the first sentence I was supposed to read. We are the first sentence I was supposed to read.
Oh, okay. On page 120.
Exactly. Sorry about that. The gestural mode contrasts with a bottom-up determination of meanings in sentences consisting of morphemes. Morphemes are the atoms of the language. And bottom-up is an idea of that there are small atoms and they together make the wholeness. But here we have top-down instead. In a synchronic sense, language must be conceived of as a system of such elemental morphemes, each having the potential to combine into larger wholes. The wholes. This is so even if linguistic elements have ambiguities and or graded qualities. Graded qualities. We propose that the first stages of language meshed global synthetic gestural imagery with analytic combinatoric, most likely vocal signs. Signs. Even a single sign may have combinatoric potential if its significance seems incomplete. Incomplete. In terms of the holophrastic combinatoric debate, therefore, we propose that both dimensions of semiosis were simultaneously present. Simultaneously present. Synthetic refers to the fact that a single gesticulation concentrates into one symbolic form distinct meanings that might be distributed over an entire construction. He plus goes plus up plus through, for example. Sign language, of course, involve imagery, but the imagery is either synchronically structured or integrated with synchronic structures. They are conventionalized so that even if their etymology involves imagery, this imagery may not be used within the sign language. The sign language. The growth point. The growth point is an irreducible minimal unit of imagery language code combinations. It is the smallest packet of an idea unit, encompassing the unlike semiotic modes of imagery and linguistic encoding. The GP carries the Saussurian double essence in the domain of psycholinguistic processing. Psycholinguistic processing. Psycholinguistic processing.
You need more psychos.
Yeah. A GP is empirically recoverable, inferred from speech, gesture, synchrony, and co-expressiveness. The temporal and semantic synchronous represented in figure 1 imply a GP built on the idea of rising interiority. Rising interiority. We infer the simultaneous presence of the idea of ascent inside the pipe into unlike semiotic modes. Semiotic modes. Even when the information, semantic content in speech and gesture is similar, it is formed according to contrasting semiotic modes. Contrasting semiotic modes. So here you can see both the Caesarean take and the anti-Caesarean take at the same time. Oh dear, oh dear. Simultaneous unlike modes create instability. Instability fuels thinking for speaking as it seeks resolution. It seeks resolution.
Resolution.
Actually, a very Kuhnian take. The GP is so named because it is a distillation of a growth process and ontogenetic-like process, but was vastly sped up and made functional in online thinking for speaking. Online thinking for speaking. According to this framework, it is the initial unit of thinking for speaking, of which a dynamic process of utterance level and discourse level organization emerges. Imagery and spoken form are mutually influencing. It is not that imagery is the input to spoken form, or spoken form is the input to imagery. The GP is fundamentally both. Yes, indeed. Both fragment and whole at the same time. For modern humans, stability comes from unpacking the growth point into grammatical structures or viable approximations thereto. Viable approximations thereto. Thereto. As surface linguistic form emerges to embody its GP in this maximally stable form. Stable form. Stable form. This role of grammar, unpacking and supplying stop orders for the changes initiated by imagery, linguistic code, instability. Instability. Is an important clue about proto-language, proto-phenomena, proto-language, proto-phenomena. Instability would have been present in this situation at the time of the earliest linguistic explorations too. Imagery linguistic encoding creates pressure for grammar to stabilize the process. The process. The process. Unstable semiotic embodiments could coexist with other factors, such as the need to limit ambiguity and together provide pressure for the development of grammatical constructions. Grammatical constructions. In figure 1, up through is analytic upness, is analytic. Upness and interiority are separated. Separated. The words also have syntagmatic values acquired from combinations within and beyond the phrase. The gestural image embodies this information, Sylvester as rising hollowness, without any combinatoric value. Unpacking resolves the tension of semiotic modes.
Modes.
The utterance, he goes up through it, accommodates both the linguistic encoding and the imagery.
Hallelujah.
And the imagery. Hallelujah. A final point is that we can fully understand what motivates any image speech combination only with a reference to how a GP relates to its context of occurrence. Of occurrence. The GP to context relationship is mutually constitutive.
Mutually constitutive.
The GP is a point of differentiation from the context. Thomas Kuhn. The speaker represents the context to make this differentiation possible within it.
We
In it.
We eat it, eat it.
A robust phenomenon concerning gesture is that the form and timing of gesture select just those features that differentiates the psychological predicate in a context that is at least partly the speaker's creation. Creation. The double essence of language includes incorporation of context. Next, we offer evidence for a brain link that evolved specifically to sustain the duality of holistic imagery and discrete linguistic encoding.
No.
Discrete. Be discreet.
Linguistic encoding.
Be discreet. Not too loud. So now we're approaching the big proof a thought, language, hand, brain link.
Brain link.
Brain link. The IW case. The IW case. An implication of the GP hypothesis is that imagistic thinking of the kind materialized in gestures is an integral component of language production. Production. This hypothesis would be supported by a speaker whose physical condition would otherwise prevent instrumental actions from occurring normally, yet still gestures. Hello? With speech. IW is such a speaker. Due to an autoimmune induced large sensory fiber neuropathy at age 19. IW was deafferented over his entire body below the neck. With great effort, IW now in Middle Ages has re-established control of his motor system using cognition and seeing and vision in the complete absence of proprioception and spatial position sense. Spatial position sense. If his vision of his own actions is occluded. IW cannot perform instrumental actions. None. Nothing. So he needs to see to move. He can, however, without any other sense of what his hands are doing, perform morphikinetically well-formed gestures that synchronize with speech as normal. Isn't that amazing? Amazing. How is that possible?
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. This dissociation of instrumental action and gesture reveals a thought-language hand link in the human brain, not otherwise discernible. Discernible. In instrumental action, orientation to specific objects in the world directs action. Directs action. Directs action. For gesture in a language use context, however, it is thought that organizes the same motor system.
Motor.
Yes. It's amazingly Kuhnian. What a coincidence.
Good.
Kuhnian. An implication is that part of language evolution involved reorganization of the brain's motor system to take thoughts and ideas rather than representations of real world objects as input to motoric activity.
Motorik. Brum, 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 brum.
Vroom, 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 vroom. Figure 2 shows synchronized speech gesture co-expressiveness in IW's spontaneous language use. He created a coordinated two-handed gesture accompanying his spoken narrative, while from the shoulder down he was under a blind that concealed his hands while permitting movement. This is a lame man walking. Lame man walking. Another indication of a thought language handling is that.
Już am cały paragraf.
Okay, thank you. His left hand is Sylvester.
Miał.
And his right hand is a trolley in pursuit. In pursuit. IW was saying and the tram caught him up. Caught him up. His right hand moved to the left. Bullface in synchrony with the co-expressive caught. Moreover, a post-stroke hold, underlining, continued the image through him and up, maintaining full synchrony with a co-expressive speech. With a co-expressive speech. Keep in mind that synchrony and co-expressivity were achieved without vision or proprioceptive or spatial feedback. Lame man walking, although he's lame. Visuospatiomotoric imagery alone drove this coordinated use of his hands. Alone, yes, alone. Another indication of a thought language handling is that IW without vision can modulate the speed at which he presents meanings in speech and gesture in tandem, together, in tandem. As IW's speech slows down, his gesture slows down equally. Still with the blind during a conversation with co-author Jonathan Cole, IW slowed his speech at one point by a third, but speech and gesture remained in synchrony. They remained in synchrony. Synchrony. The gesture was the two hands repeatedly rotating outward and inward, apparently a metaphor for the idea of a process. Of a process. This metaphoric significance is consistent with the synchronized speech. The synchronized speech. The hands rotated only while IW was saying. I am starting to get into, and I am starting to use. He paused between the first, normal speed,
Pause.
and second, reduced speeds, rotations, as he said, and that's because indicating the rotation and any associated phonetic linkages were specifically organized around the metaphor. Around the metaphor. Speech and gesture slowing together could mean that the realization of a GP entails slowing the potentially faster unit to the duration of the slower one, a principle also invoked in models of reach, grasp, coordination. Coordination, reach, grasp, coordination. In the beginning, it was movement. If the hands move outward in synchrony with a brief pulse accent, for example. The association could be maintained over a range of speeds. Range of speeds. Such a pace setter accordingly could be activated by the thought language hand link and co-opted by a significance other than the action of rotation itself.
Okay.
Again, recall that IW had no idea where his hands were. He had no manner of control. An explanation for his performance is that gestures and speech were combined online and controlled by meanings other than those organized by the attainment of real world ends. The process metaphor. In terms of the GP hypothesis, any change in the length of time a GP is active affects the linguistic and gestured components of IYAW's utterances in tandem. in tandem, together. Along the same line, when IW is told to imitate actions or other gestures, he spontaneously begins to speak. And if he's told not to speak, the imitation is impaired. What advantage does IW's gesture have for him? Is it to make him appear normal?
Normal?
Since it was initially absent after the deafferation.
Deafferation.
The deafferation.
Deafferation.
Or is it because elaboration of the gesture is necessary for the thought language system? If the latter, the advantage is in the central motor representation systems. Since IW has no feedback or of gesture, it is an internal feed forward advantage. Feed forward advantage. In the IW case, the IW case implies that the know-how of gesture is not the same as that of instrumental action, which he cannot perform. To understand this implication, sit facing a table and put your hands out of sight under the surface. Open and close one hand, extend one finger, then reach over to the other hand and touch it. Touch it. You know all the times where your hands are and what they are doing, but IW would not.
Would not.
He would not. He would not. For him, the required spatial and proprioceptive information are absent.
Absent.
Absent. Not there. Yet he performs co-expressive gestures that synchronize precisely with speech under these very conditions. It is not correct to say that IW gestures normally, as a result of having already developed the skill by the age 19, the time of his illness. 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 He had those same years to develop his capability with instrumental actions yet now falters when performing those without vision, even at the level of morphokinetic accuracy. What the hypothesized GP-type cognition explains is how currently he synchronizes his co-expressive speech and gesture without visual guidance exactly as normal. In this mode of cognition, speech and gesture are effectively one. One and only. They are one. Next, we suggest a mechanism by which such a brain link evolved specifically to sustain GPs. So general practitioner would be the last word of 1974.
General practitioner.
GPS or growth point in this article.
Page
124.
Yes, 124.
I'm going to put a pause here. So let me demonstrate here. So the sentence is, he goes up through and so on the drain pipe. That is morphometric, atomistic, separable, thing by thing in linear order, depending on which culture you grow up, is from left to right or right to left. It's not wholeness, it's synthetic. Gesture is the wholeness. It covers the whole sentence. It's not separable. So even when the information semantic content in speech and gesture is similar, it's formed according to contrasting semiotic mode. One is fragmented, the other one is holophrastic or holistic, you could say also. Simultaneous, unlike modes, they are unlike. This is very important. This creates instability. Instability fuels thinking for speaking as it seeks resolution. This is oddly close to Thomas Kuhn, where the simultaneous feature creates instability, and it's the instability that is the further progress. Edward de Bono calls that asymmetric thinking. So you have two different things, consistent but different. Is almost like wave particle. According to this framework, it is the initial unit of thinking for speaking, out of which a dynamic process of utterance level and discourse level organization emerges. GP is fundamentally both the parts and the whole. So the surface linguistic form, the one we're working with, is not the whole. And there is an up through, this is up through, I should have written that. It has a sort of analytic part where you have up, through, but in the gesture you have both up, but you also have interiority simultaneously, whereas in the language they are separable, necessary so. So the GP to context relationship is mutually constitutive. Together they form the wholeness that is so important, but also the instability. A robust phenomenon concerning gesture is that the form and timing of gesture select just those features that differentiates the psychological predicate in a context that is at least partly the speaker's creation. The speaker's creation. So this is the double essence of language, both gesture and the morphemic speech signs. The speech signs are atomistic, singular, linear, fragmented. So you can call the GP the growth point is the point where the instability creates something further. It goes somewhere. Let's now go to the proof of this, which is the IW case. It's also a very good illustration for what happens. IW is unable to perform any action whatsoever without the use of his eyes, his vision and cognition. So he doesn't have any proprioception and he doesn't have any sense of his body. He doesn't have any motor control whatsoever without looking. What is so rare is when he's shielded from the body, so he cannot influence his movements. He will still be able to synchronize perfectly his speech with the gestures. It will still happen, although he couldn't put one finger against one finger. And not only that, the spoken language and the gesture go hand in hand in speed and emphasis. In instrumental action, orientation to specific objects in the world directs action. For gesture in a language use context, however, it's thought that organizes the same motor system. So thinking is not the things, the objects. According to McNeill et al., we need to refigure completely the idea that our movements are thinking and our intentions and doings are connected to so-called objects. Because this person, he can't move anything. It's a lame man walking. And this is expressed. An implication is that part of language evolution involved reorganization of the brain's motor system to take thoughts and ideas rather than representations of real world objects as input to motoric activity. That was also he reduced speeds when the ideas, the motor action were growing, when they were maturing. So it was a slowing down, both of speech and the gestures. I think we take the rest of the, take a pause there. I'll do that.
And share screen or then you have to. No, I am locked out for some reason, so I have to go. Oh, no, I'm there. I'm there. Share screen.
Work directly. I can stay on the video.
Yes, unfortunately it's black, but everything is working.
As long as it's engraving, it's still recording. Let's see here. Now it's recording. Oh God. Oh, I take it one more. Sorry about that, Kevin. So speech and gesture slowing together could mean that the realization of a GP entails slowing the potentially faster unit to the duration of the slower one, a principle also invoked in models of reach grasp coordination. So there is a interesting connection to what we motorly do, our motor actions and the gesticular tendencies. It is like almost we create the world we live in with this combinatory, effectively very different but simultaneously done gesture versus language. I remember also we have earlier looked at Benjamin K. Bergen's Louder Than Words book, where he showed that words evolve from doings. They are all deeply situated in the motor cortex. So to think of walking, you actually walk a bit motor-wise. So it's all connected to doings. And I think this is very much in parallel to what David McNeill is saying. Astonishingly close also to Wittgenstein. There is a criterion, there is an action, and there is a stage setting. The stage setting is the gesticulation in concert with language. I'll put the pause here and I'll leave it.
Hello. Let's think about the drain pipe.
And we can now forget about the Sylvester cat in the drain pipe. But let's focus on the drain pipe as a metaphor in itself. So, what is a drain pipe? I will use a neologism invented by the philosopher Stephen M. Rosen, and it's old. I had discussed this in the past, but it's so useful, it deserves to be repeated. And so when you pronounce it, you don't hear the W. So you have actually both words at the same time in a superposition, to speak quantum physically. And what is a drain pipe? Drain pipe is actually both a container and a hole at the same time. You see, this is a hole without a W, but it is also a container, so it's a hole at the same time. So drain pipe in itself is a great metaphor or illustration of the idea or the neologism of Stephen Rosen of the hole.
Oh yeah, definitely, good one.
Mm-hmm. And then, of course, we can now, when we have this clarified, we can add the cute cat, meow Sylvester. And let's put the cat there. Let me perhaps Sylvester, as standing for Sylvester, or we could even perhaps make a cat, not a very good catty, which is there. And here we have almost Ceremonious cat also. So when the cat is inside the drain pipe, it's a very dangerous position.
Yes.
It's both dead and alive at the same time. Because if the cat would be stuck there, it would mean its demise.
Of water. There's also water logic.
Yes, absolutely. Water logic, absolutely, of Eva de Bono. And water here symbolizes both death and life at the same time. Because if there comes too much water, it could be mean both death or life. You need life, not to, if it gets stuck, the cat would need some water.
Indeed.
So it's both death and life at the same time. So it's a great metaphor for different ideas. And in this image, we could actually now return to the paper, or I could actually illustrate it. You see it clearly?
Yes.
It's a very small image. Hans, you have to make it bigger. No, you just, no.
Oh, this is what we're supposed to do to get back.
No, but the point was that they would see me in the big screen, but they didn't see perhaps anything what I was doing.
Yes, it did record.
Yes, it did record, but in the small screen. But it was also my fault. I should have taken away the.
Well, don't worry, you're still visible.
Out again, how? But okay, let's return now to
the paper. Okay.
Yes, the paper.
I cut the video now.
Yes, we could cut it.
Yes, okay, thank you very much.
We have there the gesture. You see in front of you.
Yes. It is both upward movement, interiority at the same time.
And the gesture itself could they interpret as a container. but it could also be a whole.
It is a whole, yeah, interiority and upward movement at the same time. A whole is, yeah, container and whole.
But Hans, explain it perhaps in a few words this person who at age 19 got.
He had an immune disease, autoimmune disease, so he's lost his all control over his whole body below neck. So he can still talk.
Yes, it's IV.
And IW, and he can only perform actions when he can see and have cognition of his actions. So he has no proprioception, no kinesthesia. So he cannot move, do instrumental things like drinking a cup of coffee without looking. So if it's dark, he can't perform it. So he learned some other way to move, but he speaks perfectly with gestures. They are exact. And that shows that gestures are actually controlled by a whole other part of the brain, not connected to motor activity as we normally see it.
But on the other hand, so if he wants to drink, as you mentioned, he still looks at the object.
He has to look at the object he wants to drink.
But then doesn't it mean that he's object fixated after all? He's object fixated after all. Object fixated.
No, because the whole talking and the decisions can be made without any objects being present. So he can decide, he can have a conversation, he can think, make plans, do all these things with having no objects at all present for his vision. And it's so weird because he's a lame man, essentially. But when he talks, he can accompany with his hands. And that goes to show that hand movement is not normal at all. It shouldn't be there.
So what does this show, his example that he doesn't see this example with the hands below the table? So what is happening? What is the significance of that table with missing? Yes. Sit facing a table, put your hands out of sight under its surface. Open and close one hand, extend one finger, then reach over.
No, that's an example of how you find your own fingers. He can't do that. But yet he performs co-expressive gestures and synchronized precisely with speech. So han kan inte röra, he can't move his hands. He can't form anything with his hands. But when he talks, he can still do it. And then that's a miracle, more or less. But if they ask him not to talk, he cannot do it.
So his case proves that gesture and speech is one and the same.
Yes, there's like wave and particle, they are different, but yet the same. One is expressing wholeness and is synthetical, brings everything in, and the other one is analytical, fragmented. And the fragmented idea is, of course, the Saussurean idea. Saussure is here mentioned because he actually proposed also a little bit of the combinatorical thing, but he didn't know anything about gestures. It's also very close to Thomas Kuhn.
In what sense?
Well, as I said before, the difference between the two creates instability, and the instability creates a movement.
And the instability would lie that speech and gestures are not the one and the same.
No, they're also different, yeah. Very different. I would say it's a bit quantum mechanical. Why would you go that far maybe today?
No, but this has nothing to do with Thomas Kuhn. It's more perhaps Edvard de Bono with Waterlogic.
Yeah, yeah, I'd say that too, yeah.
But because Thomas Kuhn, he focused on vision, how your vision that you see only one thing at a time hinders your progress.
Yeah, I was thinking of the paradigm shift.
Mm-hmm.
The instability in the current creates a new paradigm.
Mm-hmm.
The coherence. But ever the bone is a good example as well. It's an asymmetry between the gesture, which is different, and the speech.
Mm-hmm.
Julie?
Yes, perhaps let's end there.
I thank you very much, Kalle Lundahl. And thank you everyone for tuning in. Have a very nice day, afternoon, or morning, wherever you are.
Meow.
Meow. Bye bye for now.